Welcome back. In our last conversation, we talked about the foundation of Stoicism. You'll recall we discussed that it's important to wake up from those unconscious scripts that dictate our lives. I shared a few examples of Oprah Winfrey learning to let go of what she couldn't control, Jana Novotná mastering her focus on the tennis court, and David Goggins facing the brutal truth in his accountability mirror. We established the core rule that has kept this philosophy alive for over 2,000 years: control the controllable and release the rest. But here's the reality about philosophy and about life in general. It is one thing to understand a concept while you are sitting in a quiet, comfortable room. It is a completely different thing to actually live that concept when your alarm doesn't go off, your car won't start, your boss is yelling at you, or the world feels like it is spinning off its axis. Understanding Stoicism is the first step, but Stoicism isn't a spectator sport. It is a daily practice. It's a muscle, and just like any muscle, if you don't train it, it'll fail you when you need to lift something heavy. So today, we are going to talk about how to take the theory of Stoicism and weave it into the messy, unpredictable, often frustrating reality of your everyday life. We are going to look at how to build a Stoic routine, how to handle the people who drive you crazy, how to reframe massive failures, and how to look at time in a way that will completely change how you live. And just like before, we are going to look at some extraordinary people who didn't just talk about these concepts, but lived them when the stakes were incredibly high. Let's dive in. The morning preparation, practicing the worst. Imagine for a second that you are at the Olympic Games. You have trained your entire life for this one moment. You dive into the pool, you hit the water, and instantly your goggles fill up with water. You're completely blind. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It actually happened to Michael Phelps during the 2008 Beijing Olympics in the 200-meter butterfly final. For a swimmer at that level, going blind in the water is a disaster. You can't see the wall, which means you don't know when to turn, and you don't know when to reach for the finish line. One wrong move, and you lose the gold medal. Most people would panic. Their heart rate would spike. They would struggle with their form, and their race would be over. But Phelps didn't panic. He just kept swimming. He started counting his strokes. He knew exactly how many strokes it took him to get across the pool. He swam the entire race in the dark, counting every single pull of his arms. Not only did he win the gold medal, but he also broke the world record. How did he do that? How do you stay calm when your worst nightmare happens on the biggest stage in the world? Phelps's coach, Bob Bowman, used to do something incredibly frustrating to him during practice. When Phelps wasn't expecting it, Bowman would step on his goggles and crack them before a swim. He would force Phelps to swim in the dark. He constantly introduced chaos into the training so that Phelps would be ready for anything. The Stoics had a name for this practice. They called it premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds incredibly depressing. Why on earth would I want to start my day thinking about bad things happening? Doesn't the self-help world tell us to only think positive thoughts? Here is the Stoic truth. Toxic positivity leaves you fragile. If you only ever expect the best, you are constantly shattered when the world doesn't deliver. The premeditation of evils is not about being a pessimist. It is an anxiety reduction tool. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. When you wake up in the morning, the Stoics advise you to take 2 minutes to mentally rehearse the challenges you might face that day. Think about the coworker who always makes passive-aggressive comments. Think about the traffic you might hit on the way home. Think about the deal that might fall through. You aren't manifesting bad luck. You are putting on your armor. You are visualizing these things happening, and then, this is the most important part, you are visualizing the best version of yourself, handling them with grace, patience, and virtue. When you do this, you rob the future of its shock value. If the traffic jam happens, you don't burst into a fit of road rage. You expected it. You're ready for it. You count your strokes, just like Phelps, and you keep moving forward. Try this tomorrow morning. Before you look at your phone, before you check your email, sit on the edge of your bed. Ask yourself, what is the most difficult thing I might face today? How might my plans get derailed? Now, picture yourself responding to that exact obstacle with total calm, wisdom, and patience. Write the script for your reaction before the event even happens. The obstacle is the way, embracing the fire. So, you've prepared your mind in the morning, but what happens when the disaster is bigger than a traffic jam or a delayed flight? What happens when something you have built with your own 2 hands is completely destroyed? Let's go back to December 1914. Thomas Edison, the legendary inventor, is 67 years old. One evening, a massive explosion rocks his research lab in West Orange, New Jersey. Chemical fires break out. The fire is so intense, fueled by strange chemicals and highly flammable materials, that the fire departments from several surrounding towns can't put it out. Edison's entire life's work is going up in flames. Years of priceless research, formulas, records, prototypes, and experiments, all turning to ash in front of his eyes. His 24-year-old son, Charles, is frantically searching for his father, terrified that Edison's heart would give out from the shock. When Charles finally finds him, Edison was standing calmly, watching the inferno. His face was glowing in the light of the fire, his white hair blowing in the winter wind. Edison looked at his son and said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Charles was stunned. "We're ruined," he said. Edison replied, "It's all right. There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." I want you to really let that sink in. At 67 years old, facing the total destruction of his empire, Thomas Edison didn't weep. He didn't curse God. He didn't play the victim. He immediately reframed the disaster as an opportunity, and he meant it. The very next morning, before the embers had even cooled, he began rebuilding. His company went on to make nearly $10 million in revenue the following year. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote one of the most famous lines in history. "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In modern times, we call this amor fati, a love of fate. Amor fati is not just about accepting what happens to you, it is about embracing it. It is looking at the fire burning down your factory and saying, "Good. Now I get to practice resilience. Now I get to rebuild better." Human nature is to constantly wish for an easy life. We wish for the promotion without the grind. We wish for the perfect relationship without the difficult conversations. We wish for clear skies every single day. But a Stoic knows that a life without adversity creates a weak person. How can you practice courage if you are never afraid? How can you practice patience if you are never forced to wait? How can you practice forgiveness if no one ever wrongs you? Every time something goes wrong, life is handing you a barbell. It is handing you a piece of resistance training for your soul. If you can learn to look at your problems and say, "This is exactly what I needed to grow," you become completely unstoppable. You become bulletproof. Because if someone takes away your success, you practice humility. If someone insults you, you practice emotional control. No matter what the world throws at you, you convert it into fuel. Try this today. Think of a current, ongoing frustration in your life. Maybe it's a difficult project at work. Maybe it's a nagging injury. Write it down. Now, draw an arrow next to it and write down exactly what virtue this frustration is forcing you to practice. Is it forcing you to be patient? Is it forcing you to be creative? Change the narrative from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What is this doing for me?" Let me finish with this thought for you. One day, you'll look back at the pain and the challenges that almost broke you and realize it was actually shaping the strongest version of yourself. Every disappointment taught you wisdom. Every setback built your character. And every tear brought you closer to the person you were always meant to become. Don't give up now. Your greatest chapter is still waiting to be written. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen to this video. If something here resonated with you, please help out my channel with a like, share, and a hit on the subscribe button. Catch you on our next video.